everyone, Super Blackbird 64 here, and we have another video from Goji Center. It's what if the Indominus met the Indoraptor? Now that's actually pretty curious, because yeah, these were like the only two hybrids. Not counting Camp Cretaceous with the Scorpius. I really like that show. But yeah, what would happen if these two met? Who knows? Could they communicate with one another? Would they fight? Would the Indominus treat the Indoraptor as her own? Because they technically are family. You know, the Indoraptor was created from the Indominus. So in a way, they are related. But to be fair, the Indominus did kill its own sibling, so who's to say it's not going to do that with its own child? You know? I mean, animals do that. I mean, certain animals kind of do that. They kind of just neglect their own children. And they also do eat them, so who knows? Well, anyways, I'm going to stop talking and let's get into this. Original video will be down in the description down below, and let's get straight into this. 3, 2, 1, let's go. And now.
The Indominus Rex and Indoraptor, both some of the most dangerous creatures in the franchise, with the death of one causing the birth of another. But what if they met? Today on Goji Center, we'll break down what would happen if space and time were warped and the Indoraptor was placed back on his Lanublar years before it was created. If unleashed into the domain of its forerunner, would the
I was
island
thinking, like,
run
what
red
if they
with
were,
the
like,
blood of hybrid
made
monstrosities
together?
from a horrific battle? Or
But
would
in
something
separate
happen that could
enclosures.
lead to even more carnage taking place? Time to find out. Highly intelligent animals have greater capacity for emotion than more simple-minded beasts. And with this can come more dangers. They attack without provocation, they lash out at helpless targets, and they might even go on a killing spree without eating anything. Numerous tragic incidents involving intelligent species show this. Often, this is because these creatures are highly social and are kept away from their own kind in bad environments. Problem behaviors aren't corrected by elders or peers, and trauma can only further aggravate the situation. Add in more problems often caused by humans, and you get horrid events like Tilikum the orca or Travis the chimpanzee acting far outside their species' typical behaviors. The Indoraptor and Indominus had all of these problematic hallmarks amplified. Ask just about any animal behavior expert, and they'll tell you the conditions either hybrid was kept in was just a recipe for disaster.
Small enclosure,
today, the
by
Goji
itself,
Center team will travel back in time and secretly
and the only
place
relationship
the
it had
Indoraptor
was
inside
with
the
that
Indominus
its food
enclosure,
claw.
and
That's
then we'll
it.
just see what happens. When the Indoraptor first appears inside the paddock, the two would inevitably encounter one another. Let's say it happens at night with typical lax InGen security, so no human interference can come into play. Given their genetic templates, both would immediately smell the other and move to confront the first enemy either had ever encountered. What happens next might rely on how old the Indominus Rex is when the Indoraptor appears. One might think a younger Irex would be less hostile to the Indoraptor, but let's remember how she reacted to one of her own kind in her youth.
Yeah, her sibling.
She ate it.
Yep.
Well, that answers that. But why did this happen? And why did the Indominus kill her sibling, but later teamed up with the Raptor squad? Was she just crazy, or did Jurassic World seriously screw up? Yeah, if you couldn't guess, this screw-up is on the park, and insights to real-life animal behavior can tell us why.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Siblicide is the occurrence in nature where one sibling kills another.
Yeah,
Usually
I
this is very
name
rare in
of
social
it.
apex predators, almost non-existent in wolves, orcas, and lions. After all, for a social predator, your closest relatives are your best allies. And given the Indominus had a hefty amount of social T-Rex and Raptor DNA, she should have been the same under ideal circumstances. In species that do kill their siblings, it's usually because of limited resources like food or space when they are young. Lack of ample food or aggravating spaces cause a lot of stress to a young animal. And that's exactly what happened when the park staff shoved the Indominus into where they did. It might be nice to think Jurassic World was a wonderfully run theme park with the best animal care out there, considering how expensive its animals were, but there were some major red flags. Letting kids chase around, swinging pointy toys at, screaming, grabbing at, and riding on easily scared baby animals? Feeding live goats that can't be cleared for internal diseases to a T-Rex before an audience? Cramming a bunch of very aggressive and wide-ranging pterosaurs into a single aviary? When's the last time you saw a well-run zoo letting people do any of this crap? This place was a disaster waiting to happen. And one look at the Indominus' paddock makes it pretty evident everything about the hybrid that went wrong starts here. Animal care in captivity has thankfully come a long way from just shoving them into cramped cages for a gawking public. The standard optimal habitat for a large
I can't remember
like
the last time I went to like a zoo or something like that.
Squared of space, more if you plan to have more than one.
2008
also
Marineland,
stock the
I
paddock with
think.
shelter, toys, and ease to move around.
2007?
This keeps the animals lively, content, and less likely to develop
I think that was the last
mental
time.
problems. The Indominus
think
got
so. I
none
was
of these,
just a kid.
and it probably is why she killed her
Yeah,
sibling.
Marineland.
Looking at
That says a
outside
lot.
diagrams and shots from the movie, the Indominus paddock would have had an interior space of about 32,000 to 43,000 square feet. That is ridiculously small for her, and probably drove her nuts.
Probably.
It might sound like a lot of space, but let's remember that's only about 4 times the space for a lion for an animal 40 times more massive.
And it was still
cramped
young.
with dense foliage,
It was
high
just gonna get
walls,
bigger.
and nothing to interact with besides her feeding crane. The park staff were clearly more focused on adding ringside seats and high walls than good floor space. All this for an animal which apparently most of the handlers and veterinary staff were kept completely in the dark about. Siblicide also tends to happen when animals are very young, both because the smaller sibling can't fight back as much and because the older sibling hasn't developed mentally enough to think about anything but itself. To the young Indominus, anything in sight is a threat to what little space and food she has. A young Indominus would attack the Indoraptor on sight, just like she did her sibling. As manic as the Indominus was, by the time of Jurassic World's events, she was old enough to be able to figure things out, such as how to avoid threats or how to make valuable allies instead of kill everything on sight. Had the park introduced the two Indominus as near adults, there's a chance they might have gotten along just fine. So, if the Indoraptor was introduced to the Indominus when the
Double
Rex
your
was
villains,
still a
double
growing
your fun.
teenager or young adult, about half the weight she was in Jurassic World, around 30 feet long, 12 feet tall, 3 tons, then you'd probably get a bloodbath on your hands. Best hope those bleachers in the paddock have a marked splash zone. The Indoraptor is faster and more agile, with impressive durability to boot. Even if he was smaller, he's not totally outclassed in size to where his speed can't help out and might not try to just run away if the overly aggressive young Indominus charges him. The Indominus, meanwhile, is much heavier and would hold the edge in striking force and weight if the two got into a wrestling match. The Indoraptor struggled against a smaller, more agile, and more experienced Blue even if she wasn't in prime condition. The younger Indominus is a bigger and more reckless target. If the Indoraptor can leverage his climbing ability to scale up the walls or trees to pounce from above, he might just pull a win against the young hybrid Rex. But if the fight is dragged to the ground, the Indominus might well wind up mauling or crushing the Indoraptor. Either way, the night ends with either one of them in a bloody mess and the other dead, or them both taking each other out. But let's say the Indoraptor was introduced right before the events of Jurassic World, where it suddenly finds itself in an enclosed space with a very, very big new roommate. If a fight broke out, it would still be a bloody and gruesome battle.
before?
The Indoraptor is quite durable to shrug off gunfire and might cause some nasty cuts or gashes on the Indominus if it climbed onto her and went on the attack. With the Indoraptor's superb night vision and echolocation abilities, he would have managed to find the Indominus regardless of if she tried to conceal herself to gauge the situation. The fight,
that's
however,
right. The Indominus
would
can
go
like
very
turn
differently.
invisible because
If
of
you think the
cuttlefish
Indoraptor's
DNA, right?
speed could cinch it a win against a near-adult Indominus, here's a reality check for you. For all of the Indoraptor's toughness and rampant aggression, it's still outsized about 8-1. If the Indominus could grab and wrench off smaller, agile velociraptors trying to slice up her back, she could easily get a grip on the Indoraptor and hurl it down.
Oh yeah.
From there, if she
It's a
went for
bigger
a solid
target.
bite or stomp, no amount of bullet-resistant armor is going to stop the Indominus from crushing down on the smaller hybrid's body. After all, this same Indominus did later crunch through bulletproof glass and held up to an angry Rexy bashing her into sharp metal. If this encounter resulted in a death brawl, it would end like virtually every other battle between two predators in nature.
Yep.
Size
Does
does
matter.
matter. And with the Indoraptor as aggressive as it is, some kind of conflict is inevitable. It might have never encountered another dinosaur before, but it only knows how to attack anything in front of it. But what if it didn't end with a chewed-up dead raptor and a clawed-up mauled Rex? After all, the Indominus, by the time we saw her in the movie, manic and frenzied as she was coherent enough to talk with the Raptor Squad and possibly even Toro, even with all of the crazy chaos going on. And some speculate the reason Rexy got first blood in the Main Street Brawl was because the Indominus was trying to communicate with her as well. To the Indominus, the Indoraptor is literally blood of her blood, looking and
That's what
sounding
I was
more
saying.
like the Indominus than any other animal she would encounter later on. After an initial confrontation, probably resulting in the Indoraptor pouncing onto the Indominus, the bigger hybrid could wrench the smaller monster off and pin it down. Restrained, the Indoraptor would listen, and best listen good if it wants to live.
Listen
As
to your
crazy
mother.
as the Indoraptor is, self-preservation is something very hard to totally remove from any animal. Whilst the Indoraptor was slaughtering people left and right as it rampaged across Lockwood Manor like a maniac, it did stop and evaluate its surroundings. When climbing onto the glass roof of the museum after Maisie and company, it did pause and realize the roof was unstable instead of just recklessly charging after them. An out-of-control Scorpius would have just leapt right into the trap. The Indo realized the glass portion to the roof wouldn't hold its weight.
It's not an
and changed
idiot,
its
it's
advance
just
to avoid
out of
falling.
control.
The only reason the Indo plummeted to its doom was
failed
the sudden
project.
arrival of Blue jumping on top of it and putting too much weight on the roof. Smart enough to know doom when it sees it, the Indoraptor could decide to yield to the Indominus and stand down. And if the Indominus could talk to Velociraptors, it could talk to the other hybrid. The two now have a pack and a clear pecking order. And things would have gotten astronomically worse for everybody in the park if this all went down soon before the Indominus was going to execute her escape. Remember, this hybrid monster was smart enough to deduce the tracker in her body meant something and plan around it.
Get that out of here.
Security was lacking enough that they failed to notice she could camouflage or moderate her body temperature. It's possible they might fail to notice the Indoraptor hiding in there with her, even if it didn't have these abilities. Trying to track a warm-blooded animal that isn't almost 20 feet tall in a hot tropical environment with thermal sensors is going to be near pointless anyways because of all the ambient heat. If the Indominus can keep a lid on the Indoraptor, the inevitable escape is going to be even worse. With the Indoraptor's climbing abilities and speed, it might be able to escape on its own before Owen even got duped into entering the habitat. And if it stuck around until its alpha made her bid for escape, Owen might have a substantially harder time getting out of that paddock alive with a faster Indoraptor chasing him down. With possibly no living witnesses, the park staff would be caught completely flat-footed by the existence of the second hybrid forming a pack with the Indominus. At best, they might get a glimpse of the Indo during the brutal takedown of the ACU team. At worst, they'd have no clue what was picking off people and animals alongside the Indominus.
Because this entire time they think it's the
Two things
Indominus.
said about either hybrid would come true. Owen warned that the Indominus didn't even know what she was and how she'd fit into the food chain. Dr. Wu proclaimed the Indoraptor couldn't bring out its full potential because it lacked a mother. With the two ruthless apex
But now
predators
together?
united, they'd find out the answers to both very quickly.
Yes.
With the Indominus rampaging through paddocks and causing the massive breakout of the pterosaur aviary, the
They
Indoraptor
complete
would work
one
as a
another.
flanker to keep her covered. Any attempts to locate or track the Indominus would go sideways with a fast, unpredictable, bulletproof raptor always near her ready to ambush any who came close. And just when things couldn't get worse, this idiot gets involved. And
I
with
completely
Owen
forgot
possibly
about
not
him.
making it out of the Indominus paddock alive or not, once the Raptor squad get involved, things would only spiral more out of control.
Now they have the Raptors.
Remember, Hoskins was insistent on setting up a death match between the Indominus and Raptors, with or without Owen Grady on hand to coordinate things. If Barry can't stop what's happening, the squad would get turned loose and find the Indominus and its friend. Remember, nobody foresaw the Indominus being able to command the Raptors coming, and even if they figured out some kind of dinosaur was helping her, they'd have no idea it was some sort of raptor. And let's be real, Hoskins isn't smart enough to put 2 and 2 together without getting a 5. Seeing how the Raptor squad tore InGen security
Blue,
apart without any
Delta,
help from the Indominus,
Charlie,
they'd
and
only get
Echo?
shredded quicker with the Indoraptor launching out of
Are
cover
those the
to
names of the
join in.
Raptors?
And at this point, it's basically game over for Jurassic World. Even as inexperienced as she was, the
I feel like
Indominus
that's
tore a
wrong.
bloody trail through the park all on her own.
I know
It
Delta's
took
one
a
of them,
lot of
but
bullets,
what are the other
3
two?
Raptors, a T-Rex, and a very timely Mosasaurus to put her down. With
Oh, yeah.
things as derailed as they are, that's not happening, and nothing on the island would be a serious threat to her new pack. The hybrid raptor pack would quickly establish themselves as the new apex predators of the overrun island, with nothing short of large collective herds of powerful herbivores able to hold them off. InGen would no doubt try to reclaim some of their assets, but with
That
the
would be
Indominus
until,
and
like, 3 years
Indoraptor
later,
impossible
then
to
the
track
island
and
blows
having
up.
the whole island to run around, it would be a huge endeavor. They were already crippled from Jurassic World going under and Masrani dying. This isn't salvageable.
Yeah.
And a certain group of kids left on the island might have an extremely dangerous time ahead of them, with Toro as the last thing they need to be worried about. Other companies like Biosyn and Manticorp no doubt might try to pillage Nublar too, but only at a very heavy cost. Unless someone tries something like bombardment from the air, the Indominus might reign over Isla Nublar
Rest in
without
peace to
serious
Nublar
threat.
6. Okay, that just got dark. Let's be glad that didn't happen. So yeah, I basically said everything I wanted to say at the beginning. And yeah, I'll just see you guys next time. All right. Peace.